Tunisia is so different. Egypt is not like Tunisia. What happened in Tunisia can never happen in Egypt. And we're like, yeah, wait and see. And honestly, this belief was not shared commonly. Even weeks, like days before January 25th, nobody believed or expected that a revolution would happen. And I'm not going to lie to you, and I'll tell you that I knew that January 25th was going to be a revolution. No. The people who called for the January 25th demonstrations were simply hoping for big outcries, for a big demonstration. That was the best that it could possibly be. But we were wrong. And I'll tell you now how mechanism-wise, or how the practicality of January 25th happened. All the movements, the social movements, the youth movements, we always coordinated with one another, because even with our ideological political differences, we knew that we're few. Opposition, even with all this different ideologies that I explained to you, we have huge differences. We don't agree on many things. You will find it rarely when Muslim brotherhoods and socialists sit together and collaborate on ideas. However, that day for January 25th, we knew we have to agree on a strategy for the demonstrations, or it's gonna fail. Just to clarify, January 25th protest, Muslim Brotherhood did not participate in it. They released a statement that they wouldn't be taking part in the January 25th protests, which is very common for the Muslim Brotherhood, because they would never engage in a protest that would be anti-Mubarak, which might sound very weird, but this is how the Muslim Brotherhood are. They are a co-opted group by the regime. They are the opposition, the allowed opposition, where in fact a lot of these Muslim Brotherhood top people are just like the Mubarak regime. Their interests lie closely with the regime. They're professionals, they're businessmen, they're engineers and so on. So they wouldn't risk their own interest for making this change. However, they use the rhetoric of religion and so on to mobilize the masses. But when it comes to, this is your moment, engage, let's make it happen, they never take part. They only took part later on when it was obvious that we're gonna win, And so the other groups got together. The idea was that we're gonna start in urban poor areas and move to the big square. And hopefully, we reach Tahrir. That was the aim, that hopefully, if we can, and if we don't get, cordoned like always, we would all join in a big square. And not many people believed that we would be capable of doing so. Actually, in one of the meetings right before the January 25th, so many people didn't even think that people would come out. That it wouldn't be. It was police day, first of all, so it was a holiday, and it was symbolic. The highest thing what we would demand for was the interior minister, the head of all state security and so on. We wanted him to resign, and this has been a demand that we've had since basically Khaled Said's case. So that was the highest. That was one of our biggest demands. Is resign for Habib al-Adli to resign, for minimum wage, to lift the emergency law, but to redo the parliamentary elections since they were so rigged. But nothing like Mubarak to leave or to any of that. But we were surprised that the masses that came out, and this was total surprise, that we would go to these urban poor areas, start chanting. These protests started by maybe 110 or 50 or 100 people, and by the time we toured around the neighborhood, we were thousands. we were 5,000, 7,000, and this was happening in every urban poor city until we marched to Tahrir Square, and that square was full. And this was something I have never seen or heard about or even seen pictures of. It was truly beautiful and moving, and the people were chanting the same chants in Tunisia. The people demand the removal of regime. And people started chanting, we want Mubarak to leave, remove Mubarak, remove the regime. And this is something that even us as movements didn't even dare to dream that would happen at this moment. Even those who believed in the revolution or knew it was going to happen never expected it to happen in this fashion. There was a moment in the square on January 25th when I knew this was different and this was a revolution. And that moment was when usually, we get obviously kettled and beaten and so on by the officers, by the state security officers. And for the first time I saw, the officers running, just charging hard, running against protesters. And the protesters obviously started running away. And then for a second they stopped. People picked rocks. They started throwing them. Few of them started running back, and everybody started running towards the officers. The officers ran all the way back. And this was amazing. That moment, when I saw that, I was screaming, I was crying, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. The officers were actually running away from the people, and the people were just going, not giving up. I knew the barrier of fear was gone. It was gone, and this was different. This was different than any protest that I've been to where it was the same exact 50 people, the same exact 100 people that go to every single protest. But this time, the people, those masses of quiet people that never engaged in politics, that were thought of to be so apolitical, were for the first time taking charge, empowered by one another, by their collective, against this mass of repression, of injustice. And I will tell you, without the accumulation of mobilization that I explained to you, all the historic way of how these movements went up and down. And without Tunisia, the model that gave the people the belief to change through the streets, to believe in the process of the power of the people, that it's possible. It happened in Tunisia, where it was a similar dictator, just like Mubarak. The people were able to kick out. The power of the people was able to do that, kick out a 23-year-old dictator. Then so can we, and obviously believing that it will work because of our collective struggle. Without these three things, I don't think the January 25th would have turned the way it was. And the fact that we were faced with so much brutal force, repression, and the state police, the tear gas, the people that were killed, the cut of communication, let's not talk about that. I mean, the communication went from January 25th, Twitter first got shut, Facebook got shut. Thursday night, we had no internet. Friday morning, the 28th, we had no cell phones. There was no cell phones, no internet, and everybody went to the streets. Everybody took to the streets. The day of the mass uprising on January 28th, it was something so inspiring and so moving. We went through 7 to 6 hours of battles in the streets all around Egypt, Alexandria, Sinai, Cairo, Upper Egypt, everywhere. People were, this is some of the pictures that you've seen is, people were dying, basically, were being shot at with rubber bullets, with fire, live bullets, with tear gas, USA-made expired tear gas. Let me just emphasize that. and people that picked up the canisters knew who was the enemy. You know, this is the aid, the US aid, you know, aid, the 1.5 billion we get every year that goes to the army and goes to the regime, that the Egyptian people never see any of it. It goes to the tear gas. It goes to the institutions that repress us and that, you know, fire at us, basically. But I never expected for this massive state security apparatus to just completely die in 7 hours. They completely retreated because people stood their grounds. They, you know, they were willing to die for their freedom. They were willing to do what it takes to really take down this entrenched repressive regime that was there for 30 years. Once we took a hold of Tahrir, there was no going back. It was either he leaves and we won't leave, or we're not leaving, we're not going anywhere. And the more, like the day of the camel, basically, when they hired the thugs to come in with the camels and the weapons and to try to, you know, make us leave, that just gave us more persistence, more determination. People self-organized. This was truly amazing because from every age group, from every class, you know, rich, poor, women, men, old people, young people, Muslim, Christian, covered, niqabis, not covered. I mean, every single group, you can say, was represented in the square. And we were living alongside, we defied all the stereotypes. There was no sexual harassment. There was no, you know, people that were stealing from one another. It was truly Liberation Square. It was democratic. You know, people were setting up barricades. People were, you know, sharing food, sharing shelter, protecting the area, setting up barricades, and so on. And that, you know, was, I don't know what it was, but it was the power of the people, you know? It just feeling so that you have the power to determine your future and be the change and see and, you know, just people believed that they have the power to do it, no matter what we are faced with. And on the day that Mubarak stepped down, it was obviously celebration, but we knew that this was a turning moment where we have to carry it on and we have to continue. At this point, 2 days before Mubarak stepped down, something very interesting happened that media doesn't really talk about. Most of the working class people in different sectors, cement workers, sugar factory workers, the public transportation workers, the railway workers, went on strike. They were going on strike since the start of the revolution because obviously nobody was working, but when people went back to work, they went on strike. And on February 9th, which was 2 days before, they called for a general strike. It's no wonder that 2 days later, Mubarak stepped down. Because when you start hitting the elite's pockets, their money, then it's us, it's basically the system or Mubarak. And this put immense pressure on Mubarak to step down as fast as he did. He would have stepped down either way, but I think this definitely escalated the process. And this takes us back on what's happening now. Since after the revolution, since after basically Mubarak stepping down, the army has been in place. But we know that this is not the best option because the army basically have ruled us since 1952. Mubarak, Nasser, Sadat, all of them were of the military. The military holds a huge economic sector in Egypt. Like I said, most of the aid goes to the army. So they have a huge backbone in an interest to protect. And they definitely want to be in power. But we know that. And a lot of the activists knew that this is going to be our battle, is to keep the army in check and to make sure that they don't stay in power and hide